I don't think I've ever felt more excited and more intimidated to talk about a game on this channel. Excited because it's a masterpiece, and intimidated because, if you can't tell by the length of this video, I've been working on it for like a month already. Sometimes it can take a while to decide if I want to cover a game or not, but I could tell within about 10 minutes of starting this that I absolutely needed to talk about it. RPGs and survival horror games are two of my all-time favorite genres, and given how many RPG Maker horror games there are, that's not exactly a unique opinion. But I do think that despite how good a lot of these games are, they distinctly lack in the gameplay aspect of both being actual RPGs and being survival horror games. I've always wanted something that combines the RPG-ness of a Mother or a Dragon Quest with the survival horror of a Silent Hill or Rule of Rose. There's Sweet Home for the NES, and more recently there's stuff like Fear and Hunger, or the admittedly really good Abaddon Princess of the Decay, a game that I would kind of like to cover on this channel, but feel a little bit hesitant about for reasons that are obvious to anyone who's played it. With that said, I don't think any of these games manage to scratch the particular itch that Look Outside does. It's one of those rare games that not only executes on all of its ideas perfectly, but all of those ideas are specifically suited exactly to my tastes. I don't want to waste too much breath on this intro because this is already going to be long enough, so let's just get into the actual game. I have to give immediate props to any game that tries to get you to kill yourself within the first 10 seconds. The opening does a great job setting the tone for the experience. You play as Sam, a 20-something-year-old who lives alone in his apartment and has basically no friends. His next-door neighbor Sybil, an eye leering at you through a hole in the wall, urges you to look outside, before backtracking and warning you that something horrible will happen if you do. You can check your laptop, but the news seems to have little idea what's going on. Social media is a mix of the usual and people panicking about whatever is happening outside. There's already conspiracy theories popping up that it's some sort of population control experiment. It should be pretty obvious almost immediately that a major inspiration for the game is a certain global pandemic that happened recently, and it's honestly one of the few post-COVID works of art that absolutely nails what it's trying to be, but I'll get into that later. I brush my teeth, take a shower, and sit around my apartment for a bit before finally stepping out into the hallway. I think it's better if I let this part speak for itself. There's something so relentlessly dreadful about the opening sections of this game that I absolutely love. The thick atmosphere of the dark, unlit hallways echoing the sound of every footstep, the buzzing of broken fluorescent lights and creaking doors. It nails that classic Silent Hill style of slow, plodding intro as you inch towards the inevitable first encounter with a monster. And when you finally do, that killer battle track kicks in and shit hits the fan fast. The whole hallway is full of disfigured creatures now. Seeing people you vaguely knew begin to act irrational and bizarre, feeling that fear of wondering if they're already infected or not, captures the paranoia that makes films like The Thing or The Mist so incredible. It manages to evoke a similar feeling to the height of the socio-political chaos during the pandemic, but it's obviously done in a much more extreme and fictionalized manner that suits the premise, and it avoids the kind of heavy-handedness you'd might roll your eyes at. I hurry past the monsters in the hallway back to the safety of my apartment. The way saving works in the game is really interesting, and it feeds well into the survival horror gameplay loop. You do it by talking to Sybil, the only friend you're going to have for a while. But you can't just do it whenever you want. Every time you explore a new area you've never been to before, time passes. As the time passes, your danger level goes up. You need a minimum danger level of 1 to be able to save, but higher danger levels provide bigger XP bonuses upon returning home. Special enemies also start spawning on higher danger levels. This is a fantastic substitute to something like Resident Evil's Ink Ribbons, because it's renewable, but you still have that risk-reward mechanic going. Time is important in other ways too. The game takes place over 15 days, the duration that the strange phenomenon outside is happening. If you stay up at night, you can risk negative status effects from sleep deprivation. Managing time is thankfully fairly merciful, since it only happens when exploring a new area for the first time, or doing certain special activities in the apartment. You're not going to be crunching like crazy to get things done, but it still adds enough pressure to make you think about what you're doing. There's also events that happen on different days and at different times as you progress, and you absolutely can miss some of them, kinda like Majora's Mask. This makes completionism on a first run kind of impossible, but it also makes the whole world feel much more hostile and lived in. I get one of these events shortly after saving. A doctor knocks at the door, asking to trade medical supplies. These are similar to the door events in World of Horror, and thankfully this one isn't a trap. I stock up with the little cash I can scrape together and start exploring more of the apartment. I chip my knife trying to fend off some of the onlookers. Weapons have a random chance of taking damage every time you attack, and it increases the more you use it. There are tons of weapons to be found throughout the game, but even the best ones can break, and duct tape to repair them is pretty scarce, especially early on, so you'll have to be careful with how you use them. A lot of stamina-based skills, which is basically the game's mana system, increase the risk of breaking a weapon, and it adds another layer of strategy. Early on, you'll find yourself swapping weapons frequently to ration the durability of what you have. I managed to make it by with the chip knife for now. Aster is one of the first friendly NPCs you meet, and he sets you out on what will be the main mission of the game. He's one of the 4 astrologers who discovered the phenomenon early on, something they call the Visitor. As he explains, it's some kind of celestial body passing by Earth, and observing it causes the body to mutate in strange and horrific ways. While they aren't entirely sure what it is yet, they theorize it could be some planet-sized living organism. If that sounds at all familiar, it's a lot like the premise of Junji Ito's Hellstar Remina. The grotesque body horror throughout the game draws a lot on Ito's work, so I'd be surprised if this wasn't an influence. Anyways, the 4 astrologers each want you to collect a different offering, so they can perform a ritual to communicate with it. Aster tells me he had a dream about a shimmering liquid pouring from a dark tube, the first hint towards one of the offerings. With a weapon clutched tight in my hand, I start out on my journey through the apartment with at least some goal in mind. Aster didn't really tell me where I'm supposed to be finding the shimmering liquid or what it is, so for now I just explore any room that isn't locked. Against my better judgment, I start with the door down the hall from the apartment all the creatures flooded out of. The place is crawling with monsters. Based on the size of the place and the golf practice mat in the office, I assume he's some kind of businessman. There's a projector back here that mentions being used with negative image discs in photography, but I can't really use that for anything right now. The owner, Vincent, is lurking around by the window. He's too far gone to be helped. I put him out of his misery and take whatever I can from his apartment, including his pet guinea pig. Don't worry, I take care of it back at my apartment. I didn't really know how time worked yet fully, so I went to sleep at like 8 here and concluded my first day. Sybil is pretty much my only source of stability right now, and she warns me about a loud crash in the hall she heard. The news and social media are starting to descend into utter chaos, and I spend some time playing games on my laptop. The stats you get for playing games, showering, and eating are all invisible and meant to be more immersive mechanics. You have to maintain calm, hygiene, sociability, and morale on a regular basis. You won't know if the stats are low until the game prompts you by telling you you're feeling bad or starting to smell. As long as you keep on top of these and cook a full meal every day, it isn't a huge deal. I get another knock at the door. This time it's from Dan. Dan is a wannabe YouTuber and streamer, and he's the first party member I got. He's socially awkward and obnoxious, but he genuinely means well, and having a second person tagging along helps a lot with combat. Dan also has a really unique gimmick as well. He's constantly live streaming the events of the game, and the strength of some of his special skills are augmented by the viewer count. Views go up with certain actions, and the total number of viewers at the end of the day gets converted into ad revenue you're paid. He can choose to either put on a calm or angry persona, allowing support or offensive skills respectively. Now that I've got another set of hands, I check out what happened in the hallway. Another door is busted down, and a man covered in fleshy teeth growing all over his body is roaming around. Inside, there's a kid named Joel brushing his teeth in the bathroom. He explains that his little sister has been sick. They called a doctor to come check on her, but nobody ever showed up. His mom got bit by the little girl and is in the bedroom treating her wounds. Joel will give you the doorknob after talking for a bit, and when he turns around, I don't know what else to do, so I defend myself when he attacks and kill him. When I enter the bedroom, the mom doesn't seem any better off. I pick up a little toy soldier figure here and head into the last room of the apartment. I'm really not trying to be overly dramatic here, but I really want to reiterate that the content warning at the start of this video was not a joke. If you're particularly sensitive to horror involving young children, you might want to tap out here. The game doesn't make a habit of that specifically, but it does deal with a lot of heavy subjects, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you might not want to watch. Joel's little brother is sitting in his room, playing with his toys. At this point, the infection has spread throughout his whole body, and he's turned into a giant gash of teeth. He's still somewhat lucid. If you choose to sit down next to him and show him the toy soldier you got, you can play with him for a little bit. After you're done playing, the top of his body splits open and he becomes unresponsive. His room also has a teddy bear in it. It turns out I could have used this to pacify Joel and have him join my party, but I didn't know until it was already too late. For me at least, this is one of the darkest parts of the entire game. Putting it in this early helps establish that this game has no intention of pulling punches. Sure, games like Fear and Hunger or even the aforementioned Abaddon take things a little further, but Look Outside toes the line and it mixes in levity and humor that makes moments like this hit even harder. It's appropriately miserable for a Lovecraftian cosmic horror story. After finishing that ordeal and realizing every other door on this floor is locked, I head back down to floor 2. Apartment 20 is home to Jeanne. She made the mistake of looking outside and her body has already begun to change, but she keeps it hidden under a trench coat. She's incredibly polite and offers to pay you if you retrieve her laundry she left on the ground floor. The doors to floor 1, the ground floor, and the basement are all locked, but apparently her neighbor Lyle knows a way to reach at least floor 1. Before talking to Lyle, I take a quick look down the hallway and... Guns are another fun addition to combat. Unlike melee weapons, they can't break, but they do rely on ammo and need to be reloaded. They have unlimited range, and since enemies often start at a distance, this can help a lot. Lyle is another unfortunate victim of the visitor. Like Jean, he's managed to keep his sanity so far, and he hides his deformed body under heavy robes. He's a former coworker of Sam before the world started to fall apart, but Sam doesn't seem to have any memory of this. He has an obsession with photography, and with Sam. He'll offer to exchange photo paper for a kiss, and apparently if you accept, you can recruit him. I was worried this was a trap to kill me, so I declined, but he ended up trading the photo paper for an opportunity to take a picture of me. Despite being a major stalker and refusing to let you into his dark room, he's willing to develop any photo you have for him. I end up wasting most of the day playing video games in my apartment and head to bed early. Sybil tells me she heard some footsteps in the hall overnight, but she couldn't see anyone from the peephole. She does a good job of being a diegetic guide for the player in these early days, and it helps establish both her and Sam's character. Having two people who were literally neighbors for years and yet only now come out of their shell to be friends sets the tone for what will eventually be, at least to me, the core theme of the game. Social media is quickly devolving into a paranoid frenzy, so I leave my laptop and head out to investigate. The room to the right of mine now has its door swung open, with writing on the outside inviting me in. It seems pretty normal, some items scattered around, and no enemies lurking at the moment. It belonged to someone named Edwin, a hobbyist astronomer who took notes of his observations made before the visitor's arrival. He's convinced it's some sort of wish-granting shooting star. All his senses have begun to degrade, and he's developed a sensitivity to light, but he keeps rambling about being able to see more of the universe. I head into his bedroom. The poster on the wall lists how many moons each planet in the solar system has, and it feels vaguely important, so I write it down. The bin on his desk has crumpled up notes written in sloppy handwriting. A large chunk of the story and world building is presented through these found notes similar to Resident Evil or Silent Hill, but just as much is given through direct character dialogue and visual storytelling. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that moment in Resident Evil 1 Remake, where you read Lisa Trevor's diary of her slow mutation and descent into madness, which culminates in her showing up as you try to leave the cabin. Look Outside pulls this exact same build-up off constantly throughout its experience, with this moment in particular feeling like a pretty direct callback. I see light leaking out of the telescope pointed outside, and try to place the photo paper down to imprint a negative on it, but it tells me the room is too bright. Given all the prior tension building, it's no surprise when I turn the lights off in the main room and this happens. I know it kinda sounds like I'm dunking on the game right now, but it's absolutely the opposite. These reveals aren't exactly meant to be a surprise as much as a slow, rising dread you feel knowing what's about to happen. It loves to play with your expectations, and the absolutely killer art and monster designs pay off every single time. The Stargazer is a personal favorite design, and it will absolutely wipe the floor with you this early on, so it's better to just run. It isn't particularly scary though. Oh, and when I said the game likes to play with your expectations, I wasn't lying. This game likes to go the extra mile at every turn, and it surprises you by pretending to show its hand, before throwing a left hook and blindsiding you. I was absolutely ready for a deformed cosmic entity chasing me in the dark, but I wasn't prepared for a blob of flayed meat living in a mirror realm of my own apartment to rip its head in half. At this point, you might have started to notice that there are basically no generic enemies in the game. Rather than taking the sensible approach, by having enemy types in each area that have stronger variants, nearly every single enemy in this entire game has a fully unique sprite to them. There are a few generic enemy types, but they're outnumbered about 20 to 1 with unique ones. Doing that for every single enemy in a 20+ hour RPG, really probably more like 60 if you're a completionist, is even more psychotic than being the guy who drew a toddler teeth mutant. I managed to make it back to the telescope and imprint a negative image of the outside onto the blank photo paper. If you remember from earlier, Vincent had a projector in his apartment, so I make my way back to expose the negative I took. I absolutely love this backtracking to key locations and trying to figure out what to use certain key items for. It captures the puzzle solving of classic survival horror perfectly. Pretty much all the major progression in this game is gated by puzzles like this. There's an incredible sense of exploration as you slowly open up new areas of the apartment building. Speaking of which, don't get me wrong, I love the way this game is structured. Each floor and area of the building opens up a ton of new things to explore, and it's packed so densely with things to do. You can choose what order you want to tackle each area depending on how brave you feel, and how much you want to risk dying and losing progress. The downside to that freedom is that it makes structuring a narrative review of this game kind of a nightmare. I give the exposed photo to Lyle to develop, and he told me it'll take about a day to finish, which means I have a lot of time to kill. There's frankly an obscene amount of things to do and content packed into this game, that it makes deciding what I want to talk about kind of hard. I'm gonna do my best here, so grab some snacks, use the washroom, get tucked in, and get ready. We've got a long journey ahead of us. I figure since there's not much else to do while I wait for the photo, I finally head down to floor 1. It's a gigantic maze of halls and doors that fold in on themselves in a giant non-Euclidean loop. I can hear something huge shuffling in the distance, and I have a feeling I'm not equipped to handle it yet, so I avoid the direction of the noise and decide to enter the door with a bunch of giant arrows pointing at it. This is, shockingly, not a trap. It's the home of Ernest. He's a squatter who's been living in the apartment for years with his pet rat, Colonel Squeakums. He seems nice enough and offers to accompany us for the rest of the day in exchange for a sandwich. Given he knows the place a lot better than I do, I let him tag along and scope out the rest of the floor. This rundown apartment full of rats feels like the easiest place to start. There's a loud sound of a crying baby in the distance and a locked gate. And after the incident earlier, I don't feel great about what might happen, but I press on. This room has a note about locked doors with sockets that can fit planet discs. Apparently, each planet disc equates to a different number, and it's at this point I feel like a genius for having written down the earlier diagram telling me how many moons each planet has. The room on the other side has the baby gate key, and I finally get a look at what's been making that crying sound. I genuinely can't tell if it's a rat that's mutated to act like a human baby, or a human baby that's mutated to look like a rat, and I kinda don't want to know. If you try to take it with you, Sam will feel squeamish and put it back in the crib, but either way, as soon as you go to leave, it runs up and crawls in your bag. Next up is the plant-infested apartment. One of this game's greatest strengths, aside from, well, literally everything else, is the diversity it manages to squeeze out of a single location. Despite being confined to a single apartment building, it never runs out of fresh ideas that take advantage of the mutations happening to everything and everyone. The whole place is overgrown, and mutant plant creatures with chunks of half-dissolved corpses roam around. By now, combat has really begun to ramp up. There is a lot of combat in this game, and it absolutely succeeds at being a fulfilling turn-based RPG. You have a few main attack types with crushing, piercing, and slashing, as well as some secondary elements like fire, acid, and bullets. Enemies all have weaknesses and resistances, and it's absolutely crucial to take advantage of them. Healing items are rare, and only a few of them can be used during combat, so you're pushed at all times to make sure random encounters last as few turns as possible. This is part of why I think the durability system is actually great. Focusing on a large quantity of breakable weapons means you have to switch between them frequently, and since you're already used to switching out weapons, you're going to be changing your attack type to exploit enemy weaknesses. The first time I went through this apartment, I got slaughtered because I was using crushing weapons. On my second attempt, I used my slashing weapons even though they have weaker base stats, and it did way better. Each weapon type also comes with its own unique stamina skills built in, and some of the special weapons get their own bonus skills on top of that. I clear out the place with the help of Ernest's AoE Guitar Strike, and the free damage Colonel Squeakums does at the end of every turn. After that, I run upstairs to save and end up meeting another trader at the door. You never know when traders will show up, and it's the only chance you get to sell the junk you've gathered. I buy a few weapons and head back to floor 1. There's a disgusting wall creature demanding a child sacrifice. I hand over the rat baby creature because I assume it's just one of those things that you're forced to do, but apparently I'm wrong. You can sacrifice one of your arms instead, giving you a permanent debuff, and then raise the rat creature to be a companion. I don't blame the game for kind of tricking you into making some bad decisions like this. Sometimes you'll get flashbacks while showering or brushing your teeth, where Sam will wonder if there could have been another way instead, and these serve as hints for subsequent playthroughs. I feel pretty bad, but I get the Earth Disc. I use it to unlock this room, which has another planet disc and the Rat Freak. Firebombs and bullets take care of it pretty quickly, though. Now that I have the Earth and Mars discs, I can unlock the ground floor, where I meet my next party member, Papineau. He's a janitor obsessed with cleaning and maintaining order in the face of entropy. If it isn't obvious by his name, or the fact that you can use loonies and toonies in the vending machines, this game definitely takes place in Quebec, probably Montreal. I apologize for my pronunciation of Quebecois names, but I'm trying my best. Given the way rent prices are going, I'd say renting an apartment with only a minor infestation of mutant hellspawn would probably be like $2,000 a month. Anyway, I finally get Jean's laundry for her, something I had almost forgotten about until now. It's about evening, so I may as well make my way back and give it to her. Part of me feels like the best thing to do right now is killing the central body and putting her out of her suffering. But after Joel and the rat baby, I can't help feeling like there must be another way. The Hydra heads have some of the most visceral and intense gore of any of the sprites in the game. Pixelated or not, they don't spare any detail on the peeling skin and crushed bones of the still living victims, getting torn to shreds by her sentient tendrils. By the end, literally everyone but Papineau is knocked out, but I managed to finish off the final head. Jean is unsurprisingly in shock. She thanks you and asks you to give her some space while she processes what just happened. There's such a genuine weight to these moments, and they show the absolute misery cosmic horror is uniquely suited for. Jean's mind is still fully intact, but she can feel her mutated body ripping apart and digesting the bodies of her neighbors against her will. It's such a horrible fate that it almost feels worse than the ones who lost their minds or died entirely. A more pessimistic horror story would be happy to have Jean wallow in the physical and psychological torture until she reaches a breaking point. But Look Outside is not that kind of story. I go to bed, and the first thing I do after showering and brushing my teeth is head down to check on her. She seems happy to see you, happy just to be alive in spite of the circumstances. When you hand over the laundry, she starts to laugh to the point of tears. Even in the face of abject horror, a simple act of kindness is enough to make her feel like a person again. The irony of getting her laundry now that she's literally unable to wear clothes is not lost on her, and it's such a genuine, sweet moment between the two. This is the perfect example of how unexpectedly kind and optimistic Look Outside can be. Sam is pretty quickly established as being a loner who doesn't really talk to anybody, and there's a poetic irony to the fact that this apocalyptic nightmare is what brings him out of his shell. He had barely ever spoken to the people who lived in his own apartment, and now that the world is falling apart, he's starting to get to know his neighbors. Sybil is an unemployed recluse just like Sam, and they've connected slowly during the development of this nightmare. Jean is a sweetheart, and even Dan is nice once you get to know him. While someone like Lyle is obviously meant to be deeply flawed and strange, the plight of his obsession with Sam and social anxiety when trying to actually speak with him are incredibly humanizing. Most of the characters are social outcasts in one way or another, and giving them physical deformities they have to hide is a very literal reflection of that. As an audience, we end up feeling the same knee-jerk disgust or hesitation that society as a whole treats people like that. You end up judging others in a way you might not under normal circumstances, and it plays with that idea a lot. In making these characters into real, sympathetic people, it drives that point home beautifully. The first floor is also home to Aurelius, the second astrologer. He's looking for a painting of the visitor, which serves as the second offering. Apparently when he joined, there were 3 other members, Jasper, Beryl, and Edwin, which including him and Aster makes 5. He doesn't know what happened to Edwin, but it's safe to assume he's the one who turned into the Stargazer after seeing the visitor. He also alludes to there being another member before he joined, but only the oldest member, Jasper, knows about it. Jasper is the only surviving member that has actually observed the visitor, and while his body has begun to mutate, his mind is still intact. A nearby apartment is home to Frederick, a painter who went mad after creating a painting of the sky that unknowingly depicted the visitor. He's tormented by bizarre clones of himself made of paint, and they're all convinced that they're the real one. Talking to them will give you hints towards which painting in his studio is the correct one. You can't actually look at them since it's pitch black, and even a depiction of the visitor would cause you to mutate, so you have to touch the surface and see what color the paint on your hand is after walking out. The Frederick in the living room won't give you a bag to carry the painting in until you've killed at least 3 of the others. I end up taking out the 2 most violent ones that want me to kill the others, as well as mercy-killing Tumor Fred. Then I wrap up the correct painting and hand it off to Aurelius. It's a fun little puzzle trying to find the right painting, but it doesn't take too long. Now that half of the offerings are collected, I check out the lobby on the ground floor. It doesn't seem like much is going on at the moment, so... Well, that's probably not good. These things are crawling around the whole ground floor now, and they burst into the apartment of Mr. Henderson, the landlord. He rolls around in his wheelchair, blasting them with his shotgun, and I try to help him, but one of them spits out a chunk of hands that crawl down his throat. When I finally kill it, he asks me to grab the antibiotics from his bathroom. I don't think they're going to do much to help against the eldritch flesh monster that crawled down his throat, but I give it a shot anyway. I hurry back, but the door to leave his apartment is missing now, and there's a whole mountain of corpses piled up. This kicks off one of my personal favorite segments of the game. Mr. Henderson's entire apartment is slowly warping, and a younger version of himself demands you pay your rent. Every time you do, you can progress further into another cycle that distorts the layout even more into a surreal, PTSD-induced nightmare warzone. This might be the least scary dungeon in the entire game, but it's also one of the coolest to me. The premise of basically fighting through a veteran's dementia-addled memories of war is equal parts horrifying and fascinating, and it plays out with an almost Earthbound-like quirkiness that makes the tonal dissonance hit harder. You're fighting mutated soldiers that look oddly silly compared to most enemies, but their designs kind of feel like they're meant to evoke dismembered limbs lying on a battlefield. There are a few funny NPCs you can talk to that gives you hints or little side quests, like placing bombs and collecting dog tags. You can collect tons of money here, which helps make up for the fact that it costs $750 to totally pay off all the rent. At one point I get destroyed by a living tank and lose like 2 hours of progress, which I was not happy about, but the next time around I came prepared with half a dozen acid flasks, and I melt the thing into scrap metal. All the music in the game is utterly fantastic as well, and this area in particular is a big standout. It takes so long to explore the place that I end up having to save and sleep, taking up a full day. I don't even remember how far in I am anymore, but I think it's around day 6. I'm starting to worry a little bit since I only have 2 of the offerings, but time management is reasonably forgiving. It gives me a chance to catch up with Sybil. On top of saving the game, she has unique dialogue reacting to almost every single story event in the game, no matter how small. Her flavor text is always charming. It's a much needed de-stressor after barely scraping your way back to your apartment. I die more than once trying to clear out this final section, and decide to try and find a fourth party member to help out. To my shock and disappointment, there's nobody in Ernest's apartment anymore, and a pile of viscera sits in his camp. Apparently this is a timed event that I messed up, and it's one of my biggest regrets in this playthrough. There is another person I can befriend though. The vending machine on floor 1 can be asked questions, and it turns out she's a middle-aged woman named Audrey, another social outcast with a dead-end job and almost no friends to speak of. The dialogue in this game, particularly between party members, feels very naturalistic and real. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a very intentional contrast against the extreme circumstances and body deformities. She's pretty self-conscious of her new body, but if you give it time and get to know her, she starts to feel a lot more comfortable around Sam. She can't speak anymore, but she communicates by writing on blank soda cans, and eventually she panics, telling you she's about to run out of cans and lose the ability to speak. Investigating her body will give you some clues on what to do next. You have to head downstairs to the bar, a room full of mutants who manage to keep their minds intact. They're all just trying to relax and enjoy whatever's left of life. It's another oddly optimistic and grounded bit of world building. This game is brilliant at balancing the relentless violence and misery with rays of light. The man behind the counter, Mutt, was the last one to service the vending machine. It gives you a key, and if you use it to unlock Audrey's back, she's able to restock herself. Finally regaining a little bit of agency over her body, she resolves to join Sam and Co. on the rest of their journey. While I do unlock some other party members later, this is pretty much the team I keep straight to the end. It takes a while to level people up, so anyone you get past the first week is going to take a lot of effort to bring up to speed, and I was comfortable with this crew already. Audrey in particular might be my personal favorite. She's just an incredibly sweet person, and I'd like to think her and Jean would have been friends under better circumstances. Now equipped with a full party, I defeat the last 2 bosses in Henderson's apartment. I get another planet disc, a hunting rifle that becomes my main weapon for Sam, and a key to the basement. The fact that there are 2 bosses, technically 3 including the tank from earlier, is honestly not a surprise. There are so many bosses and mid-bosses in this game that it hurts my head to imagine how much time it took to design all of it, especially considering how high the quality is. We've pushed past the midway point, and it's finally time to head into the basement. I want to say it's day 7 or 8 now, but I've been cooped up in this apartment for so long that I'm starting to lose track of time. Sybil's behavior has been getting progressively more depressing and erratic, and she's been telling me about bizarre nightmares she's been having about robed figures. Her door is still locked, so there's not much I can do to help at the moment. I check out the rest of what I can on the ground floor, though there are a few doors I can't unlock because I haven't found the right planet discs yet. I also can't check out half of this floor or floor 2 because the elevator has been broken the whole time. I finally meet Jasper, the leader of the astrologers. He's convinced there's still a chance to save humanity if we can gather the 4 offerings, and he wants a written testimony of someone who observed the visitor. We'll get to that, eventually. He also explains that he wasn't actually the founder of the group. The one who originally discovered the visitor was a woman he was close to, and she's already been mutated beyond any ability to communicate with. She was able to leave enough clues in her work to help Jasper and the others figure out how to perform the ritual, and hopefully communicate with the visitor. In the meantime, I head downstairs. This corpse in the hallway here was fresh on day 1, but it's been decomposing more and more, which doesn't inspire much confidence in me. The basement is easily the largest area in the game, and it has a longer runtime than most entire RPG Maker games. We're hitting a certain breaking point now where I've gathered so many party members and resources, and gained enough familiarity with what kind of tricks the game likes to pull, that it isn't really scary anymore. The designs are still shocking and violent, but you pretty much know what to expect now. This is something every horror game has to contend with at some point, and Look Outside is thankfully able to fall back on the fact that it's just a really good RPG. Sure, you might not be scared, but it doesn't lose any luster when it's bursting at the seams with creativity, and combat continues to be engaging. I died more in this part of the game than anywhere else, and the dungeons going forward can be pretty brutal. The first area still has a few apartments. As if the game hasn't already won me over in every possible way, we walk into a room with Kamen Rider posters everywhere. This guy mutated into a biopunk rider suit. Aesthetically, he might be my favorite mid-boss in the whole game. After clearing this place out, we finally enter the sewer, another personal favorite dungeon. Enemy designs are killer as usual. This guy in particular who jump scares you halfway through the fight with the water bursting out of his eyes is crazy. I love all the people fused with pipes jammed into their bodies lumbering around. Like everything in this game, it squeezes every last drop out of an idea and leaves nothing feeling underbaked. Near the back, hiding in an alcove, we meet David. He's a teacher that was on the bus along with his students before it crashed into the apartment earlier. Despite his deformed spider body, his mind is still all there, and he asks us to help find the kids. He tells me they're all special needs kids, and if this were literally any other game, I would be very skeptical about how this is going to be handled. Thankfully, Look Outside is a beautifully written game, and it manages to deftly navigate the premise of rescuing mutated special needs kids from sewer monsters in a genuinely heartfelt and cute manner. Other than Zachary, the blind boy who lost his seeing eye dog, we aren't told what the children's disabilities are. It avoids the low-hanging fruit of making their mutations obvious reflections of any disabilities, and they all have unique personalities and interactions with Sam. You have to remember their names and personalities based off of the descriptions David gave, and convince them to come back to him. They're a bit skeptical of Sam at first, but they're all really funny and sweet kids. They're given some of the cuter designs, and the whole side quest is just a surprisingly heartwarming moment. It's a big highlight, just showing how good the writing in this game really is. After this, you find an area near the boiler with a bunch of people that have gathered to hide and pass the time. A few college students are at a table in the back playing cards, while a tentacle creature is attempting to relearn the guitar with his new appendages. The old lady here is a retired nurse who worked at a soup kitchen, and she can heal you up once per day, which is incredibly helpful. Once again, this game is just finding ways to show a sense of togetherness and optimism. Disparate groups of people who'd normally never interact finding community and bonding over shared tragedy is basically the core theme of this game, and it's reiterated time and time again. It balances the game's extreme gore and apocalyptic setting beautifully, without feeling cheap or trite. We also meet the fourth and final astrologer, Beryl. She cryptically asks for a recording of security camera footage from outside. Jasper was weirdly dodgy about discussing the member they lost, but Beryl happily opens up about their founder, Sybil. It is kind of a surprise, but given how much of Sybil's cryptic dialogue has hinted at this, I'm not totally shocked. Sybil was very close to Jasper, and it's heavily implied that they were in or moving towards some kind of relationship before she discovered the visitor. She was the first to find it, and months of observation completely shattered her body and psyche. The meat sludge all over the apartment is apparently all that remains of her body. Beryl is pretty convinced that the Sybil that lives next to us is a different person, and I honestly have no idea what's going on at this point. I'm gonna get that manuscript that Jasper asked for eventually, but not without making my way through the parking garage. Enemies here are insane as usual. Lots of people mutated into car parts and tires. Most do a lot of damage and resist everything but armor-piercing bullets and acid, which make them a struggle to defeat. The SWAT truck is a killer mid-boss and another memorable encounter. I haven't mentioned it yet, but if Audrey is in the party during boss encounters, especially against partially mechanical enemies, they drop special, bespoke equipment that only she can use. They range from stat buffs to unlocking entirely new attacks, and it makes her one of the most versatile characters you can have. There's even a mechanic down here that sells spare parts for her, and I pick up the cooler that gives her a full party heal move. Across the garage is what looks like some kind of storage room. One of the janitors is being eaten by a disgusting pile of tendrils on the floor above, and we finally get access to the elevator here to go save him. I don't even know how to describe what I'm looking at here, but it's the reason the elevator has been stuck. It puts up a hell of a fight, but I found a flamethrower in the parking garage, and I keep spraying it with fire until it dies. The fight against the tongue worm creature isn't too bad, but each phase reveals more of its mouth. I'm so accustomed to the extreme violence that by now I'm more impressed by the sprite work than I am disgusted by it. There isn't a ton to do on the newly opened sections of the ground floor here, but floor 2 has what we're looking for. I just need to go back to my apartment to take a quick sleep and... The elevator I just unlocked is now out of service since the whole power system shut down. The decomposing corpse at the bottom of the staircase is missing now too. Awesome. Great. I know I said the game stops being scary about halfway through, but this part still makes my skin crawl a little. I can't tell if this is an axolotl or a tapeworm filled with human heads, but I kill it as fast as possible and head to the breaker room. You can tell special care was put into making these enemies uniquely horrifying and difficult to fight. They have shock moves that can insta-kill most party members and cause stun. You have to make your way through this maze of equipment and pipes, being careful to avoid standing on the water once the electricity flickers on. Even after you kill the mid-boss and bring the power back on, the whole parking garage is now filled up with new, even more deadly enemies. Moments like this really help, both because they genuinely catch me off guard, and they give an excuse to make familiar areas dangerous again, since there's no random encounters. I kinda wish there was an enemy type similar to Crimson Heads from Resident Evil 1 HD, that you have to use a special item on to burn or dissolve so they can't mutate back to life. But it's hard to call that a missed opportunity when the game already has this much content. A lot of bosses will already mutate and get progressively harder the longer they stay alive starting from day one, and it's an elegant and narratively cohesive way of balancing the difficulty scaling late game. With that out of the way, I head up to floor 2 through the elevator and into the apartment of an author who is fused with his typewriter. The gimmick here is that each turn he writes a manuscript page with his own perspective of the fight, and he foreshadows what his next attack type will be. It's wildly creative and another massive highlight in the seemingly endless stream of creative boss battles this game has to offer. You can restrict his attacks by cutting off his tongue, but I opt to just dump as much damage as fast as possible into his body and barely manage to scrape away without dying. There are pages of an unfinished manuscript sitting in his office, and they have to be combined with one of the 3 other half-finished manuscripts scattered around the apartment. Unsurprisingly, the correct one are the loose pages that drops upon his death. Dan's apartment is next door, and he asked me to grab his game console, so I stop in there as well. This fight is one of the emotional peaks of the game for me. Dan started out feeling like an archetypal gag character, and the game does often lean into his more annoying traits, which only makes the harshly realistic and humanizing reaction of his mother's mutation hit even harder. Even when you head back to the apartment, he just tries to do his wannabe streamer gimmick to hide his feelings, but as soon as the camera goes off, he just sort of sits there catatonically. He obviously doesn't know how to talk to people in a genuine way or process his own emotions, and they convey that well without feeling heavy-handed. I hand the manuscript over to Jasper and head to bed. There's only one offering left to get. The last offering we need is a recording of CCTV footage from outside. In order to do that, we have to get a blank tape from the convenience store, and the only key to enter is stuck in an area I've been avoiding for a while now. It's the last of the major dungeons in the basement, the fungal lair. I actually tried to clear this place much earlier in the game, but my entire party got wiped fighting the last boss, and it made me lose several hours of progress. I'm not making the same mistake twice though, so I saved it for last. Most of the enemies here don't actually put up much of a fight. I have to avoid all the floating spores in the air or I start hallucinating, but the flamethrower makes quick work of the grunts. There are 4 NPCs to free in this area as well. Sylvian offers to teach you a card game you can play as a bonus pastime. Claire will offer a variety of upgrades and expansions to your apartment that give you new pastimes and enhance the effects of cooking and sleeping. Jean-Pierre can craft special rare super weapons with some crazy sounding names. These all sound really exciting, and they tell me to meet up with them at the entrance after I clear out the dungeon. I've been looking forward to this since like 6 gameplay hours earlier when I died. All the supplies they asked for are things I haven't found yet, but they tell me they're further in. I also meet Philippe, a moth that wants to help me on my journey. I let him join the party and make my way past some simple floor switch puzzles. I do away with the mid-boss pretty quick and interact with the final NPC here. Philippe tells me it's a beautiful princess, but it kind of looks more like a disgusting mold monster to me. I keep pressing him about it, and we get into an actual argument before he genuinely just gives up and admits he's trying to kill me. I learn from my mistake I made last time and immediately dump all my strong attacks into Philippe, so he can't assist the Spore Mother, and then I burn her into a pile of ash. All that's left is to meet up with the others at the entrance to... I don't know why I genuinely fell for the idea that the area full of hallucinogenic mushroom spores had real NPCs that would introduce new gameplay mechanics to me. This is equally as frustrating as it is funny. I use the key to grab the tape out of the surprisingly small convenience store, and kill the boss here that barely puts up a fight. It's one of the few sections that genuinely feels a little underwhelming to me, since it is a fairly different location, but at least the boss in the security room looks sick. It's a banger design, but I'm also pretty overleveled for him now. I have to make sure I'm actually recording the outside for the ritual to work, but I need a living creature to be in front of the screen to make sure I'm on the right channel, which means... I'm sorry, little buddy. It's either you or the entire world. I don't feel good about this, but at least I have the footage now. I hand it off to Beryl and sleep again. Tomorrow, we finally finish this nightmare. I head back to make final preparations with Jasper when I notice there's a new dialogue option that's shown up. I explain that a woman named Sybil lives next to me, and while he's skeptical that it's the same woman he knew, he does give you a key to her apartment, room 12. The first time I checked this place out was early on when I originally got to floor 1, and I didn't think much of it at the time. Now that I know that all this pulsing, mutated meat sludge is Sybil's body, it makes a lot more sense. I interact with the wall at the back and manage to find a hidden door underneath the fleshy growths. Inside here are the most important pieces of story in the entire game. The bathroom has this thing, the spider husk. It's having an existential crisis, realizing it's not a real person but some kind of homunculus. Nothing you say to reassure it will make it feel any better. The drooling creature in the living room is searching for something, but nothing it says makes any sense. In the kitchen, a creature with sunken eyes and frazzled strands of hair shambles around, repeating the same phrase to itself. The world is over and it's my fault. There are notes scattered around, logs of Sybil's first discovery of the visitor. We see the tone shift in her writing from excitement to a slow, creeping dread as she realizes that the movements are impossible for a celestial body. Whatever she's been watching is moving closer to Earth, deliberately. There's another invisible door to the left of the living room you can open by using herbicide. This is where all of Sybil's final research was hidden. Her writing is erratic and panicked. She's begun hallucinating shadow creatures and hearing knocks all day and night. Her body has started to mutate, and she knows the visitor is coming because of her, because she looked it in the eye and it looked back. A giant planetarium is built into the floor here, connected to an electronic lock. There's also a door bolted shut, but there doesn't seem to be any way to open it. If you manage to gather all of the planet discs and put them in the correct order, it opens up the electronic door. Inside are the broken pieces of a telescope. There's a set of keys as well, for apartment 35, the one directly next to yours. You can bring the telescope parts to Jasper, and he explains that they're from the first telescope Sybil ever owned, a gift from Jasper himself. He's nearly in tears realizing she kept it all this time, despite the fact that it's practically a toy. He repairs it and gives it back to you. I head back to floor 3 and up to apartment 35, where Sybil has been hiding this whole time, watching me through the hole in the wall. The whole place is pitch black, trash scattered everywhere. Sybil is nowhere to be found. We finally meet her face to face, and she seems completely fine. You can chat with her a bit, and it seems she's relieved to finally see you. Strangely, she doesn't seem to know anything about the astrologers or Jasper when you try to bring it up. I question how she even knows the visitor would be here for exactly 15 days, and she doesn't seem to know where she got that information either. She doesn't remember much of anything about her life, actually. Not until you give her the telescope. As badly as I want to save her, she seems terrified at the prospect of even remembering the knowledge she's obtained. She practically begs me to promise that I'll let the truth die with her, and it's the least I can do at this point. Whatever she found out, the world can never be allowed to know, not even Sam. Everything has been leading up to this. Jasper hands me the key to the roof, and the astrologers head up to prepare for the ritual. I've been playing the game for almost 2 real-world weeks at this point, as long as the characters themselves have been stuck here. Despite every bit of good sense telling me otherwise, I finally step outside. The grandiosity of this moment is delivered with all the emotion I could have asked for. I gather the astrologers and meet them at the highest point of the roof. The ritual has finally begun. I've been stockpiling in anticipation of whatever I'm about to face. Things seem to go from bad to worse as their form warps and mutates into a singularity. They can easily hit for upwards of 100 damage and inflict nearly any status effect in the game. I'm dumping out my highest damage attacks hoping to chip away at it. Audrey is unsurprisingly carrying much of the damage output with Body Slam, but the whole team is pulling through however they can. Eventually, I wear down the Chaos Quartet and... This is my final chance, the last opportunity I have to keep the promise I made to Sybil. It's too late. The best I can hope for now is to kill the Exalted Four, and pray that the Visitor will leave what's left of the Earth alone. They hit even harder now, and the status effects are piling up too fast to keep up with. My only hope is to spam whatever party heal items are left and maximize damage output. After a hellfire of bullets, explosives, and sword strikes, Sam calls out once more. This is the first time he's spoken completely by himself, without the input of the player. Somehow, some way, we managed to do it. The damage that the Visitor has caused can't be reversed, but for the first time, there's real hope. Whatever happened between the astrologers and the Visitor we'll never know, but despite everything, things are okay. Party members even get their own epilogue. Sybil is isolated from this new world, but even she has managed to survive, staying close with Sam. This is only one of about 15 endings in the game. It's easily the happiest, and for that reason, it is somewhat controversial. I actually think the hopeful tone is very much in line with the themes of the game, but it does leave the biggest question of all unanswered. What is the Visitor? If you want your happy ending, you can take it and leave now. Sybil is willing to give her life to hide the truth, and taking her life is the only way to get it. Even after breaking your promise, she still blames herself more than anything. Her true form is unveiled, and you're transported to the meat world. It's a gigantic mirror replica of the apartment that exists simultaneously on top of the real thing, made up of Sybil's gigantic, deformed body. The only way to defeat her is by destroying every single part of her body so completely that there's no way for her to regenerate. The people she's absorbed through her mutations have become gigantic organs inside her body, each one adding resistances and abilities to her moveset, as well as giving her an extra turn. The more of them you destroy, the weaker she'll be. The organs can slowly regenerate over time though, so you need to route the path you want to take carefully and figure out which ones are worth breaking. Enemies here are by far the strongest of any area. This is the toughest stretch of the entire game, and it will stop at nothing to prevent you from finding the truth. I end up destroying her lungs, stomach, pancreas, uterus, brains, and liver. It took nearly 2 hours of scraping through brutal fights, and since Sybil obviously isn't there to save our game, the only way to record progress is sleeping. Doing so just gives her time to regenerate the organs, so you have no choice but to do the whole thing in one go. Even after pushing through this dungeon, I still have to fight Sybil with almost half of her organs intact. Compared to the Exalted 4, this fight feels far more like a final boss in difficulty. She can use party-wide attacks, inflict most status effects, and use special moves that permanently have my max HP during the fight. I use every single item I have left, dump every bit of ammo into her body, and desperately try to keep my party alive for long enough to defeat her. By the end, almost everyone's max health is well below 200, and every turn runs the risk of having a party member instantly die. Halfway through the fight, her body mutates even further, and she fully heals any damage she's received. It's a brutal climax, and the risk of losing all the progress you've made so far only makes it more terrifying. It feels like the game truly doesn't want you to get this ending. I managed to push through and get a lucky turn where every single one of my strongest attacks lands, with multiple critical hits, and she's finally defeated. There are no final words, only a key buried in the viscera on the floor. There's only one thing left to do. I make my way back to her apartment, back into the planetarium hidden behind the walls. The heavy padlock creaks and echoes as it hits the ground. In the pitch black, a crumpled up piece of paper sits on a desk. You're given one final warning before passing the point of no return. problem you often run into when writing cosmic horror about information hazards is that doing a reveal of what said information is tends to be impossible. The truth is either not scary enough to feel satisfying or not original. While I'm sure this idea has been done somewhere before, I've never seen it, and it pulls off the impossible by being a genuinely miserable and existentially horrific revelation. This, the Unity ending, is arguably the darkest, as it completely strips humanity of any agency, erases its history, and ends with everything that has ever existed ceasing to exist or to have ever mattered. Most importantly of all, this ending actually feels incredibly cohesive with the themes of the game, and there's a reason I chose to show it in contrast to the Promise ending. Bear with me while I go off on a tangent here, but I want to discuss what these two endings mean, at least to me. I can't say for sure what the intent was, but for me, Unity and Promise are kind of beautiful when paired together, and offer two perspectives of the same idea. Throughout the entire story of Look Outside, we follow Sam as he learns to socialize with people around him, starts to break down the isolation he's been stuck in, and realizes he has more in common with strangers than he expected. Time and time again, there's a relentless sense of optimism and togetherness as party members and survivors alike band together. People from wildly different circumstances find comfort in the companionship of one another, and rather than the differences between people driving them apart, they allow for an even stronger community. We see the survivors all play unique roles in keeping up what's left of society for one another, and Sam's new friends contribute to his adventures with their special talents. The Unity ending to me shows that we're quite literally all made of the same thing. We're all made up of visitor matter. We're all human. But at the same time, by relinquishing our differences, by homogenizing and trying to eradicate what makes us different, we lose any sense of self. The pain, the suffering, the hardship, all of it is part of the price we pay for sentience. The Promise ending doubles down on this. The world chooses to retain its humanity, and people come together as individuals to help one another rebuild society. Suffering is not eliminated, differences are not removed, but compassion helps the world move forward. That's what I took away from the game, at least. That's only 2 of 15 endings. I had to cut out basically all side content in this video as well, so I really only showed maybe 30% of the game. I've barely even scratched the surface of how much there is to do. The game is only $10, and at the time of posting this, it should still be on sale for $6. If you've watched all the way to the end, I absolutely implore you to go pick it up and experience it for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all the viewers who were patient as this video took a lot longer to make than expected. That's pretty much it. See you later.